Hello, my name is Bailey. Welcome to the channel. Today I'm doing my January 2021 wrap-up of all the books I read in January. Before I jump into the books themselves, I'm actually trying out tracking a bunch of statistics and that kind of stuff this year. So at the beginning of my wrap-ups, I'll tell you all these statistics and stuff I tracked throughout the month. So without further ado, let's get into it. First off, we have my rating breakdown. We have 0 1 stars this month, 1 2 star, 1 3 star, 1 4 star, and 1 5 star, and my average rating for this month was 3.7. Next up, we have my page count and audiobook hours. We had 1,159 total pages this month, which breaks down to an average of 289 pages per book. And then in regards to audiobooks, I listened to about 13 hours and 6 minutes of audiobooks this month. And the last stat I have here is the format and stuff like that, and the age group. So I read 0 middle grades, 3 young adult books, and 1 adult book this month. And the format that I read these in was 1 physical book and then 3 audiobooks. And 3 of the books I read were from my backlist and 1 was newly bought this year. That was the segment of today's show that I like to call Random Shit I Track. Without further ado, let's get into the specific books I read. They're sitting here, but we're gonna go through them individually right now. Hi, I'm editing right now, but I did want to mention that in wrap-ups, I do have a tendency to miss out on a few of my thoughts on the books I'm talking about, but I did vlog all of my reads this month, and I just posted my January reading vlog, so if you want any of my in-depth thoughts, check out that vlog. They're all there. My vlogs tend to have more comprehensive thoughts on the books I'm reading, so check that out if you want my in-depth thoughts about these books. My first read of 2020 was Orpheus Girl by Bryn Rebel Henry. This is a YA contemporary sapphic story. This book follows a girl named Rhea, and she is in love with her best friend Sarah. They live in this tiny conservative Texan town, and one day they're caught kissing, doing some gay shit, and they end up getting sent to the same conversion therapy camp. And Rhea is determined to rescue Sarah from this camp. It's an Orpheus retelling, ergo the title Orpheus Girl. She's trying to rescue her love from the underworld, so to speak. I gave this 2.5 stars. The sapphic vibes were nice, but this is a debut novel, and I think the writing kind of showed that. There was times when the writing just became a little bit laughable to me. They fail at escaping this conversion therapy camp multiple times, and the reasons they fail become more laughable every time because it just seems like they're so set to succeed, and then suddenly the car flips and they crash. It's like their truck hit a banana peel in Mario Kart sometimes. It was they were set to go, and then they're just oh, well, the book can't end yet, so they gotta be set back again. I thought the plotting in that way was just a little bit not great. I don't know, that was just kind of jarring to me. This book does contain graphic depictions of conversion therapy, electroshock therapy, which is really hard to read, and I thought that was handled well, in my opinion. I just saw a lot of the characters very flat. There wasn't much personality to them. Nothing really made them stand out. And even the relationship between Sarah and Rhea, as much as sapphic cuteness, whatever, there was no depth to their relationship. It was just kind of they've known each other forever, now they're kissing. It didn't really have much substance to it. I don't really hate this book at all. I like Greek mythology, and I like the Greek mythology retelling elements of this. There's a character in here that I really, really like. Her name is Catherine, and she's the conversion therapy counselor, or one of the counselors. I think she's very interesting. She's very flawed, obviously, but her story and her reasoning and her being a victim herself was very, very interesting to read. I really thought her character had more depth than the other ones, honestly. All in all, this book wasn't the best, but it wasn't the worst, so that's positive. It's editing me again. I just want to mention one last thing about this book, and that is that the lesbian rep was a little bit weird at times. I'm not here to criticize the thoughts and feelings of an Own Voices lesbian book, because I'm pretty sure this book is Own Voices lesbian, if not its Own Voices sapphic. During this book, it kept reiterating the fact that lesbians can't be feminine. It acts like lesbians are built different. The author describes the main lesbian character not being able to swish her hips femininely, which is not a lesbian thing. Being born a lesbian versus being born straight, for example, doesn't make your body physique any different. Sometimes the connection of femininity to being lesbian was a little weird because there are femme lesbians and there's masculine lesbians, it doesn't really, like, being a lesbian doesn't really correlate to your femininity. I'm not trying to shit on the author's, like, feelings, but it was a little bit weird for me. Next up, we have Color Outside the Lines, edited by Sangu Mandana. This is a YA anthology that focuses a lot on interracial relationships and intersectionality between race and sexuality. I gave this 3 stars. The way I rate anthologies is I rate all the short stories and, like, average it out. This ended up being a 3-star. I was very harsh on this book in the beginning because the first 3 stories are absolute duds for me. Like, I gave them 2 stars and maybe 1 stars. Like, I hated them. But after that, it kind of picked up and I ended up enjoying some of the stories. Anthologies aren't usually my jam, so going into this, I didn't expect to love it, but it got 3 stars. It was pretty decent. There were 2 stories in here that I gave 5 stars. The one that's like my favorite is The Agony of a Heart's Wish by Samira Ahmed. It is about colonial India, and it follows this girl, this Indian girl, who has a meet cute with an Irish soldier on a train, and they can't be together for obvious reasons, and it's very heartbreaking but sweet in its own way. I really liked how this book talked about race, and I related to a lot of character struggles in this book. For example, there's a South Asian character in one of these stories, I don't remember what it's called, and he gets called a terrorist often, and I'm South Asian as well, and I have been called a terrorist often, honestly. And I really related with that, like those little microaggressions that people don't like to focus on. Like, I feel like when we talk about racism, the thing that comes to mind is obviously like murder and outward violent racism, which makes sense. But there are those little microaggressions that people of color face, and I like being able to see myself in a lot of these stories and these like little microaggressions that we face on the daily sometimes. Another thing I really liked about this book is that it has a full, diverse cast of people of color. I feel like often, especially in the book community, when we say diverse, a lot of people find that synonymous with black. And not to say that black stories shouldn't be told, they should, but a lot of times we say we need diverse books and then start recommending just black books. There are other people of color out there and their stories deserve to be told, so I liked this book focused on all sorts of people of color, and had a lot more actual diversity of culture and countries and ethnicities. I thought this book was cute. I thought there was some interesting viewpoints on race and relationships in this book, and I would definitely recommend this if you're into short stories. Don't judge this book based off the first 3 stories too, because in my opinion they're not the best, but there are some gems in here in my opinion. The next book I read was The Assassin's Blade by Sarah J. Maas. This is the prequel novel to the Throne of Glass series. I've already read Throne of Glass to Empire of Storms, and so I already knew what happened in this book, but I'd never actually read the book, and I ended up giving this one 4 stars. I think I technically gave it a 4.3 stars, so we love being precise. The Throne of Glass series follows a girl named Selena Sardathian, and she is this super deadly and renowned assassin, and we start off Throne of Glass where she is in a slave camp because she was caught for her crimes, you know. And we start off in this slave camp, and this guy named Prince Dorian, who is the prince of the country she's in, comes propositioning her to be his champion in his father the king's competition to pick his assassin. This competition is between a bunch of convicts, like thieves, murderers, mercenaries, that kind of stuff, and whoever wins gets to be the king's assassin and wins their freedom after a few years. So Selena agrees, and Throne of Glass really follows her in this competition to gain her freedom, basically. The series really devolves from there. Like, it really does. But this year, one of my goals is to finish this series finally. I never read this book, Tower of Dawn or Kingdom of Ash. I've now since read this, but I never finished the series, and it's one of those things that really grinds my gears because now I have to reread the series, but that's my goal for this year. So I started off with this one. I actually really love this, and I really think this is the best book in the series, honestly. From up to where I've read, I think this one is definitely the best. I think the characters are developed the best, and it makes me depressed because, like, even though I knew what was going to happen in this book before I read it, I still got super attached to them, and I was still shocked when things happened to the characters. And I don't know, I was really emotional, honestly. I actually really end up liking the format of this book because this is a short story collection. It has 5 short stories in it, I do believe. And despite it being short stories, which I don't typically like, these are linear short stories, so basically what happens is you have the story or whatever's happening in her life, and then you kind of jump from that to the next most interesting event in her life, so you kind of skip the in-between stuff that you'd have in like a full-length like novel, and I really liked it because you're kind of bouncing from interesting stuff to interesting stuff and cutting out the interlude, and I really enjoyed that, and I like that they were linear, so like they had a purpose. They weren't just kind of like random tidbits from her life or a random character's life. I really was not explaining things the way I wanted to when I was filming this video. what I said there is totally fine. I just wanted to just kind of explain it further. Assassin's Blade follows one linear storyline. It starts off with Selena and company doing something, and that thing causes the rest of the book. So all of the stories are related to what happened in the first one. Like, the first one snowballs everything else that happens. So yeah. The end made me very sad, and I honestly think that, like, the romance in this book is the best developed one in the series, the most respectful one, just the most healthy one, and the fact that the main character doesn't end up with this person is just, like, mind-blowing, because this is the peak. The dude she's dating in this book is the peak. He is literally her best match. He's the same age as her, which might seem like a weird thing to comment on, but in a Sarah J. Maas book, partners being the same age or relatively the same age is very hard to come by, so I liked that. He's so fucking respectful. He deserves so much better. It depresses me what happens to him in this book. Like, the injustice in this book is so immense, but the fact that she doesn't end up with this guy and, like, she settles for a different dude later on just, like, grinds my gears. Like, come on. This is the peak. But yeah, I can't really talk about this anymore because, like, this is a prequel novel in a series. I can't talk about this book. I liked it a lot. I haven't read a Sarah J. Maas book since Crescent City last year. I kind of shit on Sarah J. Maas a bit now. There are things about her books that I really don't like, but in the end, I do find her writing addicting, and her characters, no matter how kind of annoying and tropey and recycled they are, they're entertaining. Her action scenes I'm really into. I really love her action scenes, and I really like this book because, like, in this part of the series, magic hasn't really been introduced yet, so you're seeing a lot of hand-to-hand combat, and that's my favorite type of action scenes because you're actually seeing, like gritty combat. You're not just, like, she shot magic at them, you know what I mean? Like, she's fighting, she's ducking, she's parrying. That's really exciting for me to read, so I really, really enjoyed those elements of this book, and I'm actually kind of excited to keep reading the series, but I'm also kind of not excited because, again, the romance in this book was the peak. The characters in this book were the peak. Can it get better? Probably not. This is the best book in the series, honestly. I suppose I'll give you my updated ranking of the books whenever I finish the series, but this is currently reigning. Last but not least, we have The Dreamers by Karen Thompson Walker. This is an adult sci-fi book. It follows a bunch of characters in this small town where this epidemic, this sleeping epidemic, has broken out. Basically, this virus causes people to fall into a deep sleep where they have elevated brain activity, and this virus kind of affects everyone differently, and you can't wake these people up. Like I said, we're following a bunch of different characters and how this is impacting them. To me, this book parallels COVID-19 so much. Like, I know it's not surprising because, like, pandemic behavior and epidemic behavior is pretty consistent through history, but it was very eerily similar, and I found that both cool and frightening. My favorite thing about this book is the writing. I've gushed about the writing in this book so much, but it's so perfect for the content. Dreams and sleep is so whimsy and mysterious, and the writing is so eerie and disconnected, and it's just so perfect for the theme, and it just really brought me into the story. Because we're following so many characters, you never get that, like, that much information on any of them. You get enough information on, like, what's happening with them, what their history is, and that kind of stuff, but, like, you're not diving deep into any of the characters' lives. And something that I really enjoyed in this was the fact that, like, in the different perspectives, the other characters would be involved, and obviously the perspective character wouldn't know that, like, us, the reader, knows that other person, but it was really interesting seeing how strangers are involved in individuals' lives. Everyone's lives are interwoven in that way, and I really liked seeing that because it just got me thinking a little bit. My favorite character is definitely the character that's mentioned in the synopsis. I wouldn't say she's the main character, because she's not, like, delved into any more than any of the other ones, but I definitely was anticipating her perspective the most while reading this book, and her storyline, like, shocked me, dude. Like, it was my favorite storyline, and simultaneously the most upsetting one for me. But otherwise, I think the writing is great, I think the story is great, I think this book is just kind of excellent, so yeah. I gave this 5 stars, by the way, did I mention that? Those are the 4 books I read in January. All in all, started off the year pretty well in my opinion. My ratings went up this month. I went from a 2-star to a 5-star, so can you ask for any more? Overall, pretty good month. I hope your January was pretty good. I hope your February is even better. I've been Bailey. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.